Congratulations, you've chosen the spoiler version. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, and I'm your favorite blind film critic, and this is Deadpool and Wolverine, the spoiler version, where I get to talk about anything I want to talk about. I have a spoiler-free version of this, where I mention virtually nothing about the film, so just kind of like a really nondescript plot description of the film. I don't talk about any of the cameos, so if you want to jump into that, feel free. But this movie's currently in theaters, has audio description done by Deluxe, narrated by Jedediah Barton. Today I'm wearing a purple hat backwards, black sunglasses, and I have intentionally a Green Lantern shirt on. Like I said in my other video, I chose this because I think it's funny, and I think if Ryan Reynolds for some reason ever saw my review, I think he'd be more likely to find mine to be hilarious, due to the fact that yes, I do have a Deadpool shirt, I also have a Wolverine shirt, and I also have an X-Men shirt. All three of those shirts would be valid, but I'm wearing Green Lantern instead because it's hilarious. So it's not even Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern. It's just like, sort of like, if you know type of thing. And if you can see also, you might notice that one of my posters is actually an X-Men poster. The one to my right is actually an X-Men. So if you're questioning my bias, it's pretty out in the open, man. I don't know what to tell you. I wear my bias on my sleeve. I like comic book films. I have The Dark Knight and X-Men. I have DC and Marvel here. I don't know what to tell you. So, I only have two posters that are like slightly visible in frame. Yeah. And this was a ride. This was a trip. This is directed by Sean Levy. And oh my God, there are a lot of people in this film. Some of the other critics have avoided talking about things that I'm not going to do that. We're going to talk about some stuff because it just kind of pissed me off. It set me up for like, I sort of had like a negative going into this because I was like, why aren't they talking about these things? What's happening here? So, the plot of the film basically is Deadpool. We open up at the beginning of the film and Deadpool is talking to us, like he does frequently, about, Wolverine having died, and he goes and digs up the corpse of Wolverine with the adamantium claws. And he thinks that, healing factor, that Wolverine's not really dead. And he goes up and it's just the adamantium skeleton. And then he does this segment where the TVA shows up and he fights them to the tune of Bye 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 while dancing with the adamantium skeleton. It's an amusing sequence and very Deadpool-y, for anybody who ever loves that stuff. We later find out that the reason for this is Deadpool is basically living a normal life. He tried to become an Avenger, but the Avengers said no. Jon Favreau does guest here as Happy. He is in the film as Happy. He does his interview, and there's a lot of banter between Ryan Reynolds and Jon Favreau that's really amusing. And Jon Favreau tells Deadpool no, that he is not Avenger material, which makes Deadpool go become a car salesman because his girl really wants him to do something with his life. And so he's a car salesman along with Peter, who follows him to the car dealership because so Peter's there from Deadpool 2, and he has both arms, which is cool because all of this stuff, that was one of the biggest questions that I had from people not talking about certain things in the film was, okay, so we went to the trouble of doing all that from the other film, then why aren't we, So, yeah, he does work with Peter, and he's trying to sell this car, and there's some great jokes about like the Honda Odyssey versus this Kia, whatever he's trying to sell, and he just really hates a Honda Odyssey. lots of pop culture references that if you don't know why he's making them, you'll just scratch your head every time. And then it's all set up for his birthday. Um, and we go to his birthday where we find out that he and Vanessa are no longer together, that they broke up. And they still, you can tell that there's still something there, especially from Deadpool's half. Like, he's just really like, I'm sorry I failed you. Like, he's in this like weird, like, I'm a failure phase of his life. He's selling cars and I'm a loser. He's like, I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, um, most of the original cast returns. Vanessa is here, which is really important because she is also in another scene in the film when he has one of those dreams like he did in Deadpool 2, where he gets inside of his head and he has a moment where he speaks to Vanessa. That also happens here. So she did show up to the film. A lot of critics haven't mentioned her, which made me think, I was like, she's such a huge fart. I'm sticking with it. For the first 2 films, that why wouldn't she be in this one? And I was willing to be like, if Vanessa's not in this film, fuck this movie. Kill it with fire. Because you can't do 2 films. You can't do what you did at the end of the second film and then come back and be like, well, the actress didn't want to come back. Be like, you gotta do better than that, man. So yeah, Vanessa's here, and she has, I would say, very little to do, but she is here, and she does have lines. Also, Blind Owl. As a blind person, I feel like I should have feelings on that, and they do comment on it. Like, Hugh Jackman later as Wolverine makes a comment about, like, wait, you call her Blind Owl? And I'm like, it is sort of, but the way that Deadpool does all of his jokes is it's almost like he's addressing the problem, like the problematic nature of everything that he does, or if something is problematic or anything like that. He's just, like, everything is just sort of out in the open. It's like it's intentional or for a reason, or there's a reason behind it, or he's trying to do something or make you think or provoke you in some way. So it confuses any other film. I'd be like, we can't have a character named that. But in another film, in the Deadpool universe, it just feels like, yeah, because that feels right for this universe. You know, it's a very weird film. So she's back. The taxi driver guy is barely in this film. Barely in this film. It's very sad that his screen time has been very diminished. He's like at the party. And they do touch on Colossus. They do Megasonic Teenage Warhead is there, and Yukio, whatever her name is. I guess they're still dating, so she's still here. What's not here is Domino. This is never mentioned. And Cable is gone. And the kid that they saved from the second film doesn't show up. But Peter's still here, which is weird. It's like we're acknowledging the second film, but we don't want to bring... I feel like Domino could have been here. I get that Cable's time traveling, so he wouldn't necessarily still be here. And maybe Russell's like going off and doing his own thing. He doesn't have to necessarily continue to be a friend with Deadpool. I don't know why Zazie Beetz couldn't have been in this film, you know? And they could have had some great banter about luck, you know? But I guess because they don't feel compelled when Deadpool goes on his journey, he doesn't feel compelled to bring like Colossus and Megasonic Teenage Warhead along with him. He goes alone. So it's not like having another person there with powers that he would have been like, well, let me go grab Domino. Like, he doesn't grab anybody. He knows other people who have powers. They're in this film. He just doesn't use them. They're just at the birthday party. They're part of his family. So, and TJ Miller is gone. Google it. Google TJ Miller. Why doesn't TJ Miller work anymore? So yeah. Ryan is then he gets kind of stopped by the TBA again, and we meet with Matthew. We have this scene with Matthew McFadden, who explains his name is Paradox, and he's there for exposition. Lots of exposition. Basically, in every universe, there's an anchor hero. In Deadpool's universe, Logan was that anchor hero. This makes absolutely no sense because Logan was set in the future. So in the current timeline of where Deadpool is, Logan is not dead because Colossus cannot be alive while the events of Logan can be present in the film. This is one of the biggest problems that I have, possibly the biggest problem that I have with this film, is that Wolverine, Colossus is here. Wolverine's whole thing was that, like, all of the mutants were dead. Everybody had died except, like, Professor X and Caliban. So those other ones that were just at the birthday party would not be alive if this was Logan's universe. Nor would Deadpool likely be, although he wasn't an X-Men, so maybe he was just mourning it. I don't know. But anyway, it's kind of dumb. It's one of the things, and it ties in at the end because I've seen some people who are like, well, this isn't Logan's universe. This isn't that universe. So that's a different timeline, right? This is Deadpool and Logan are in different timelines. Because I think they interpreted the beginning sequence as being the fact that that Deadpool went to a different timeline to get that adamantium skeleton. But my counter to that would be that later on at the end of the film, Laura ends up in Deadpool's timeline. She's in the void. This is jumping around. So X-23 is in the void, which we'll get to. But then after she gets freed from the void, her timeline is Deadpool's timeline. However, and see, the thing about Laura, X-23, is that she directly references the events of Logan. She has no accent anymore. This girl does not sound like she ever spoke Spanish. They're letting Daphne Keane do a straight American accent on this character. It is so fucking weird. It is one of the weirdest things. And I'm like, did anyone catch this? Was there anyone that was like, wait, so the character that spoke Spanish for all of Logan is now speaking perfect English, like with no hint of an accent because she's not actually Spanish. Because she's not actually a Hispanic actress. Anyway, and she's now in this timeline, but Colossus wouldn't be allowed to be in this timeline. And I know the villain's name Paradox, and it's supposed to be like, this is a paradox. And it's the kind of thing that you go, is it Deadpool intentional? Sort of like the blind owl thing. Are we trying to say fuck it, or is this poor script writing? And I don't know because I don't have access to those people. But that's what I would say is I question it. I'm trying to put that aside and say that I really enjoyed the film, but there are parts of it where I was just like, dude, do you need me to work for you in like Marvel continuity? Like, can I help? Can we join the fight? But anyway, so he goes on this, Deadpool has to jump through and find a new Wolverine, basically. That's what he interprets as being. So he fights Paradox and he steals a device that allows him to jump through and go through random Wolverines. One of them is really short, which is hilarious because that was always the thing, Wolverine is supposed to be short. And a lot of people, like, fan casting for Wolverine used to be Danny DeVito, which would have been an excellent, by the way. They could have done so much with this. They chose Henry Cavill to be a Wolverine, and Ryan Reynolds makes a big deal about it, and he's like, oh, we could treat you so much better here in the MCU. And he's like directly addressing basically the fact that it's Henry Cavill, and not just that it's Wolverine, but it's actually Henry Cavill playing Wolverine. And he's like, oh man, they did you dirty over there. Why don't you come over here? We can really help you. Come with me, you know? And he's like really trying to pull Henry Cavill into the MCU, which is hilarious. But they could have done more with it. They could have had Danny DeVito would have been hilarious. Uh, and I think people would have picked up on it because I think a lot of people know that Danny DeVito was like the original fan casting for Wolverine based on the height thing. Like people really wanted a short Wolverine in the beginning. Uh, and also Hugh Jackman was not the first person to be cast in that role. Fun fact. He got that role when another actor was originally offered that role, chose a different film. This is one of those things where you always go back through history and you're like, did you know that Keanu Reeves was not the first person offered Neo? And like, it's really interesting when you look back through history and some of these people who are iconic in their roles were not actually the first choice. Hugh Jackman was not the first choice for Wolverine. It would have been really funny to see the other guy, who's, I know he still acts today, and I should remember his name, but he chose Mission Impossible 2. He was the villain in Mission Impossible 2 instead. And I can't think of the actor's name, but he would have been a funny character drop. If he could have talked about regrets for not, or something. I don't know. Anyway, he's like, oh, I did that sequel. Nobody knows who I am. They could have gone so much further with some of this stuff. So he finds a Wolverine that's drunk and is, bitter, and he sort of kidnaps that Wolverine and brings him back to his universe. That Wolverine has a history that's based on the fact that he screwed up and killed his entire universe. Not really. I've seen people who suggested that like he caused the death of all mutants in his timeline. It doesn't really say that. It just kind of suggests that maybe that Wolverine is the last mutant in his timeline, possibly. But he's definitely the last X-Men. Somehow, there was a scene where he was gone, and then humans went to the X-Mansion, and they killed all of the X-Men while he was away, and he came back and found all their dead bodies, and then he started killing the bad people, and then he's like, but then I started killing good people too. It's just like, but it doesn't really say that like the rest of the mutants are dead. So I've seen people make that leap to judgment. I don't know why they made that leap to judgment. I never got that out of either the audio description or what Wolverine was saying. So I think the X-Men are dead in his timeline, but I don't know that like extraneous mutants are not alive. So, not everybody's a X-Men. Anyway, so yeah, he just lives in despair, and everybody hates him. And he wears his yellow OG Wolverine outfit. Very important. He's got his yellow OG outfit on. He's that timeline Wolverine. Anyway, so he gets pulled back. And Paradox is he's all about deleting Deadpool's universe no matter what. He's like, no, you can't do this. And he sends them both to the void. His thing is really stupid because he's like, I don't have time. But Loki already explored how time passes at TVA versus how time passes for us in like our timelines. It's not the same. So for Paradox, it wouldn't be the same. So the fact that he's been tasked with watching over this one timeline, which is apparently going to die because its anchor hero died, which doesn't make any sense when you think about anchor heroes and the fact that for millions of years, there was time, and then suddenly Wolverine happened, and now because Wolverine died, the timeline is going to fade out. So, what? Like... And I know that they're doing this because his name is Paradox. So they're just like, don't ask too many questions. And it's like, you could have just written an easier plot. You could have just written it. Anyway, so they end up in the void. And they immediately meet Johnny Storm, which Deadpool thinks is hilariously is Captain America. And he's really excited because it's Chris Evans. And so basically Chris Evans walks up on them. and Deadpool he's making all these Captain America references because he's like, oh, we got Captain America, blah blah blah, and then the bad guys roll in, and it's a lot of like island misfit toys, like the Lost. We've got Pyro, played by Aaron Stanford. Uh, there is a Sabretooth. I don't know if he was played by Tyler Mane. Um, he might have been. It's definitely not Liev Schreiber. It's either Tyler Mane or a brand new person playing Sabretooth. Um, we have Toad, which could be Ray Park. It's hard to tell because Toad doesn't speak. We have Psylocke for some reason is a villain. Why do we keep putting Psylocke on the bad side? She's an excellent hero. I love Psylocke. I would have loved, to see her in. I want to see her used. Listen, if we reboot X-Men, could she just be on the good team for once? Can we stop casting her as the villain? Anyway, and Juggernaut, who is not Vinnie Jones, that's for sure, and doesn't seem to be whoever was used for the Deadpool franchise. It's like a new Juggernaut. Definitely not Vinnie Jones though, because Vinnie has a very recognizable voice. So there's just like a couple of people, and so I may have missed somebody too, and if I did, I apologize. I think Callisto was there. There's a lot of people. Anyway, so that's when Deadpool finds out it's not Captain America, it's Johnny, because he does the flame on, and Deadpool's like, what? Because he's expecting Cap to say, Avengers Assemble, and then instead he says flame on. So they fight and they get kidnapped. Like they get overtaken by these people because they're way outnumbered. I don't know how you feel about the villains, but there are too many of them, and they turn out to be the army of for Cassandra Nova, who is Xavier's twin sister that was purged from a timeline at birth and basically is in a wheelchair because she never learned to walk, I think, is her storyline. Something like that. Anyway, or needs a wheelchair. She needs something. I didn't get, my audio description was fading in and out, so I don't know if she's walking. There's like a ramp that comes down for her. And they mention a chair. I don't know if she stands ever or walks ever in this film, or if she stands, walks. Deadpool made a joke about ableism. I don't know. Sometimes, I'm gonna watch this again when it hits Disney Plus, but I don't conceptually understand what Cassandra Nova was moving or doing. But she has this weird thing where she's sort of like telepathic, but it's like she puts her fingers literally get like inside your head, but they're like psionic figures or something. So she can read people's minds and thoughts like that, which is what she does with Deadpool. Plays around with the scene I talked about with him and Vanessa. Plays around with that. Later on, she'll finger Wolverine as well, which they absolutely make that joke at some point about fingering. And I can't remember. There was one joke that Deadpool made that was great. It was he's like, he makes a lot of jokes throughout the whole thing, but when he said I'm not a natural bottom, I was just like, I can't believe we're doing this in a Marvel film and a Disney film with a hero. I mean, he made so many like sex jokes in this that it was hilarious. About like tools and toys. Like somebody had something that looked like a sex toy to him, so he started making like sex toy jokes. And he's like, "We'll do this, but I want eye contact the whole time, and I'm not a natural bottom." I don't remember. That was around the same time as this thing was happening. Anyway, so Deadpool basically gives up Johnny Storm in a thing that will be resolved in the post-credit sequence. They go back to it, and he basically says that Johnny Storm was talking shit to about Cassandra, and Cassandra removes the skin from Johnny Storm, and he collapses into like goop and intestines and stuff like that. Um, so Chris Evans dies, and those two end up getting away. They get into a Sentinel boot and then fly away. This movie is so random. um, they end up in another part of the void where they run into another. Well, first they run into Dogpool, which is an ugly dog that Deadpool finds to be so ugly it's cute, but it is like one of those, like one of the like ugliest dogs you could possibly find. But so he finds this little dog, and it's Dogpool, and then another version of him comes up, and he's got like longer hair, and it's Nice Pool is his name. And this guy makes of all of the Deadpool variants, makes the most screen time of all of. You will see multiple Deadpool variants throughout the film. There is Lady Deadpool, and I don't think they mentioned that it's Blake Lively. There is a great Gossip Girl joke though. Deadpool says something about how there is a certain amount of. He says there are this many bones in the human body. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. Don't quote me on that. I don't know what the number was. And then he adds one more, and he's like, and then there's. He says something like there's 359 human bones in the body. He's like, but there's 360 when I'm watching Gossip Girl, and it's one of those jokes that if you know, you know, because if you know that Ryan Reynolds is married to Blake Lively, then it's funny. There was a joke about that hinted at Hugh Jackman's divorce. There's a great joke that I loved for Deadpool that hints at Emma Corrin's. She had this big thing about intimacy coordination. She made this big speech, this big reaction after she was in that Netflix movie, and she. The fact that Emma was cool with him making that joke is hilarious, because I remember seeing Emma doing press for this, and she was talking about how she came into this role and she thought she was going to get like, she was like ready to get into like shape and get into, and she was expecting the studio to give her like a trainer to get her into fighting shape so she could fight. She didn't realize that her character didn't need to do physical contact fighting. And so I was like, how many coordinators do you need? But she's always out here talking about how she needs like a trainer or a coordinator. But yeah, Deadpool makes, I think, a really open joke after Emma Corrin has fingered his brain. He's like, where are the intimacy coordinators? And I was like, that's a dig at Emma. That's not even, most people wouldn't get that. They wouldn't get why you're making that joke right now. So there's a lot of that stuff. Nice Pool gives them a van, but of course it's a Honda Odyssey, which is what Ryan Reynolds hates, which is why it's important for you to know that Deadpool hates this Honda Odyssey thing, because he ends up getting one, so that they can drive to the Borderlands, which is where the rest of the people who are like Human Torch are. So, yeah, anyway, Deadpool runs away. He does mention that the other Deadpools are not as nice as him, and that there are obviously more variants stuck in the void. But Deadpool and Wolverine drive off. They have a fight because they had an argument where Deadpool convinced Wolverine, and then Wolverine hears him say something else, and he's like, what did you just say? And they have this fight inside the car, which is pretty cool. And he uses he made an educated wish, and you know, they end up getting taken, and they find themselves in this place later on. They find themselves there's like alcohol and stuff inside. They find a city, right? And I'm jumping through things. I'm trying to remember the whole film. They find sort of remnants of things, and Wolverine can smell alcohol, and Deadpool makes a joke. He's like, "No, that's rubbing alcohol." You know, oh, okay, well, fuck your liver. You know, it's just like, because Wolverine is such an alcoholic, he'll drink anything. He just drinks rubbing alcohol. Um, they find the other four big cameo heroes that are in this, and these guys have, I would say, more screen time. As I mentioned, X-23, Daphne Keane, Laura from Logan, Blade, played by Wesley Snipes, uh, Elektra, played by Jennifer Garner, and Gambit, played by Channing Tatum. And there's a lot of jokes about how, are you sure that never happened? It wasn't, you know, like with Gambit's thing, because he was attached to play Gambit in a film that never happened. It was a long gestating film that eventually died, and eventually, like, it was in development hell, but he was attached to play Gambit for years and never got a chance to. And they make a lot of jokes that his accent is terrible. He has this really bad Cajun accent, and Deadpool has to keep translating for the audience what Gambit is saying. Channing Tatum is excellent in this, by the way, and this is one of the greatest things, because I was looking at this, and they make a joke, they make a reference to Punisher. Now, they do say that there were other heroes that were down with them. I know that they mentioned Quicksilver, um, but there were some other heroes that they mentioned that were in the void with them that had died by Cassandra's hand. So I'm not going to say that some of these couldn't have happened, but it did open up the thing to me where I was like, man, you could have gotten Thomas Jane from The Punisher, would have been a deep cut for the franchise. You know, I mean, like, there are other people. I was thinking, but I realized that Sony owns Spider-Man characters. But man, it would have been excellent to see Jake Gyllenhaal as Spider-Man, and to get that reference, and for Deadpool to be able to make those jokes about Jake Gyllenhaal as Spider-Man. He was on deck and started training to be Spider-Man because Tobey Maguire had an injury, and he was dating Kirsten Dunst at the time, so he was the natural go-to, and he was a rising star, and he almost replaced Tobey Maguire for Spider-Man 2, and he came really close, and I think that would have been really funny. The kind of the same thing they did with Channing Tatum. It's one of those things, like I was saying with Danny DeVito, with still can't think of his name, from Mission Impossible 2, which is really embarrassing. But some of those people who it's like have either been fan castings or really almost did get a part. It would have been funny to see maybe somebody from Fantastic would have been funny in here. I don't know. I just think more than four. I get that their budget, but some of those actors are not. Thomas Jane is doing like straight to video stuff now. The fact that he was good, if he got offered a theatrical release, I think he'd be like, I'll do it for free, whatever you're paying the extras. Let's do it. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's so many deep cuts that I would have loved to see more, just more of them. I didn't get enough. I'm actually of that camp. I feel like there are people who are like, these are lame and they distract. I'm like, I wanted more. Deadpool's best jokes are like in the deep cuts. Like the Jennifer Garner, he makes some joke about Daredevil, and then he looks at her and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm so sorry to hear about Daredevil," and she's like, "Yeah, well, like because they're divorced. Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck are divorced, and anyway, he finds little ways at digging at all of these things that have nothing to do with anything, because he's constantly breaking the fourth wall. And he calls himself Marvel Jesus throughout the whole film because he thinks originally that's what Matthew McFadden's paradox is there to do. Because he wants to pull Deadpool out of it. I should have mentioned that. He wants to pull Deadpool out of his universe because there's a stronger timeline that needs a Deadpool to join the Avengers in that timeline. But as a result, this timeline with this Deadpool's set of friends will die. But he will become an Avenger in another universe. Deadpool's like, no, I'm not having that. So it is that is a thing that they tease. But because of that, he thinks that he's Marvel Jesus. He's like he's the Messiah, so he refers to himself quite frequently as Marvel Jesus throughout the whole film, which I think is hilarious. Uh, so anyway, these he gets these people and a reluctant Wolverine to go and fight Cassandra Cole. Their plan is to get Juggernaut's helmet, because Magneto was here and Magneto died. It doesn't say which one, but yeah, Cassandra already killed a variant of Magneto and melted the helmet, so they can't use Magneto's helmet. But Juggernaut is here, and his helmet still has the same properties that kept Charles's mind out of his head. So he's the only one that can't be controlled. So they need to get his helmet. So they all go into battle to try to get Juggernaut's helmet and to stop this so that Deadpool Wolverine can go home, fix everything, and hopefully get everybody back to their timelines. Sort of like with the promise that X-23, Blade, Elektra, and Gambit will be returned to their timelines if Gambit has a timeline. Somewhere he does, I guess. And so they fight. It leads to basically cutting to the chase. Pyro is offered a chance by Paradox to leave the Void if he can kill Cassandra, because she's the only one that has the powers to leave the Void. Like, because her powers are so strong, she can like rip a hole or whatever. She can't really do that. She has Doctor Strange's ring. So anyway, when you get there, she has a ring from a Doctor Strange that she killed, and says that she wore his skin around for 4 days. It's very weird and creepy. Wolverine, basically, she's in Wolverine's head, and she's talking to him, and he like she's really like reaching him, and they're having this like really deep sort of dramatic moment, and then it ends up Pyro gets through and he shoots Cassandra to try to kill her, and while she's being distracted with this like Wolverine stuff, so she takes these bullets, and Deadpool is like, let me, we just let her die, and we could take the helmet off of her and she could fix it. And she's like, if you take the helmet off, I'll kill both of you. And like, she's not even like hiding it. And then Wolverine's finally like, no, take the helmet off, because I can't sit here and watch you die. Charles wouldn't not. I love Charles too much, and Charles wouldn't want this. And from his universe, so he convinces Cassandra that the Charles that he knew, who loved him, who saw something in him, would have seen, he would have, I think he said something like, torn a hole through space and time to get to Cassandra if he had known that she was there in the Void. And that's the one thing that reaches her. So she opens up a portal that lets just Wolverine and Deadpool out. So they get to go back. Then they still have to stop Paradox. This is an exhaustingly long film. It's only 2 hours and 7 minutes, by the way. So they have to stop this machine that Paradox has already turned on that's going to destroy their world. They get Paradox to tell them how to do it. Oh, God, they fight all the Deadpool variants. I forgot that. He brings in all of the Deadpool variants to fight them. All of them. Just a whole bunch of different ones. There's like Kid Deadpool. It's my understanding that Kid Deadpool has way more lines than that. They were just cut. So she only gets to say one dirty thing. It's like really aggressively. That's really funny when she does. It's good. It's for impact purposes. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know that we needed. There's Lady Deathstrike, Lady Deadpool, not Deathstrike, Lady Deadpool, which is played by Blake Lively, but you wouldn't notice because she has Deadpool makeup and Deadpool mask on. And yeah, a bunch of other Deadpools. And it ends up that how they get out of this, because they're in this fight for their lives, and Nicepool dies in all of this, is Not Dogpool, though. Dogpool even gets to stay with Deadpool at the end, so he keeps Dogpool. I don't know what Dogpool's timeline is, but he stays here. Um, and uh, every Deadpool has a Peter. So Peter runs in, and he's got his X-Force uniform on, and he's like, no, everybody stop, and they're all like, Peter, Peter. Like, everybody's just like really happy to see Peter. And Deadpool's like, wait, you guys know Peter? And he's like, yeah, we all love Peter. We all know, everybody knows Peter. Like, so every Deadpool in their universe, no matter what, has a Peter. And so this Peter convinces them to stop fighting Deadpool. And I don't know. Anyway, so Deadpool, Wolverine end up in the basement where after Paradox, I'm jumping. This is also a long review. They have to sacrifice. One of them has to sacrifice themselves, very Armageddon style, where like it looks like somebody's going to do it, and then the other person like shoves the other person out and says, "No, I'm doing it." It ends up that it really did take both of them. Paradox says that one of them, it'll kill them and atomize them, and then they won't exist anymore. But then when they both do it together, they both end up surviving. So, anyway, so at the end of this, another character from Loki comes and flirts with Peter for a little bit and sets everything right and takes Paradox back. And after he gives this speech about how his two friends died saving the universe or whatever, he's like, no, Cassandra Nova did this, and I was assured that she was, and now she's here and she's doing this, and I sent two of the best people I know down there. And then you hear them down there, and he's like, God damn it. And anyway, everything works out, and but he can't reset Wolverine's timeline, and basically she tells him there's nothing to fix. She's like, if we go back and reset Wolverine's timeline, then he doesn't go through the experience that he needs to save yours. What sort of like everything happens for a reason type of thing. So what made this Wolverine a hero was that he needed that catalyst to be a hero. So everything is right in the world. And at the end of the film, like I said, X-23 is there. Because he's like, I've got a few friends in the void. Is there any way that you could return them to their timelines? So the assumption is that X-23, who did not jump through the portal, returned to Deadpool's timeline because it's her timeline, not because she's timeline jumping. So if this is Daphne Keene, Logan was set in the future. This movie makes no sense. However, I have noticed that this version of X-23 has no accent. So if Logan happened in two multiverses and Deadpool had a Logan that happened during his timeline and that X-23 didn't come from south of the border, then maybe I don't know. I don't have answers for you. It suggests that Deadpool and Vanessa, if they do another Deadpool film or any kind of film with the two of them again, would probably get back together. She puts his hand on his, and they kind of stare at each other in the eyes, and even though they don't like make out or anything, he's like, I did it all for you. Even if you don't choose me, I did it all for you. And it's kind of nice and romantic, kind of ends the film. Fuck ton of cameos. The Hulk is in this. I forgot to mention that. One of the times that he leaps to find a Wolverine, he finds a Hulk. And God, so many little drops. You should have lots of pop culture knowledge. In my non-spoiler review, I recommended a couple films to see. Definitely watch the original X-Men trilogy. I don't think it's as important. I didn't want to say specifically, so I just was like, watch some X-Men films. I don't think it's as important to watch the later ones, but because I think the cameos that he pulled were all from the first three X-Men films, I think you should have passing knowledge of Bryan Singer's and Brett Ratner's X-Men films. And Logan, you have to have watched Logan. It would definitely help if you've seen Loki. I'm sorry, I know everybody's like, I don't want to watch any of the Disney shows. It's like, this is very Loki heavy. These characters from the TVA and everything, this is very TVA oriented. I mean, there's a lot of exposition here because they assume nobody watched Loki, but I had a better experience. And literally, like, there's one thing that happened that's specific to Loki, and he even gives you the episode. He's like, you mean from Loki season 1, episode 5? So they're very out in the open about this. I don't think you need to really have seen any of the other Disney shows in order to make this work. They don't mention anything else that I caught. You probably should know who Elektra Blade. It's funny if you know that Ryan Reynolds was in Blade Trinity, so that way you can get the dynamic that Blade has with Deadpool as Ryan Reynolds, because a lot of these jokes are at Ryan Reynolds' expense, sort of like how he went back and shot himself in the second movie while reading a Green Lantern script. And yeah, so Blade, Logan, Elektra. There's no Gambit film to watch. I'm sorry. The only film that Gambit ever appeared in was played by Taylor Kitsch. So Channing Tatum's thing is more of just like a really deep cut reference. And like I said, I think most of the villains, if not all of them, the only one would be Psylocke if it's played by Olivia Munn. I think everybody else was from one of the first 3 X-Men films. So, yeah, that's it. And stay through the credits because it's a whole bunch of... It's set to that Green Day song, Time of Your Life. It was actually kind of fucking beautiful. I'm gonna be honest, as a long fan of the series, as a childhood fan of X-Men, I've been a fan of X-Men since I could, I don't know, breathe. Before there was ever an X-Men live action film, I mean, I had trading cards, like X-Men trading cards, comic books. I had the toys. I got up every morning to watch the Fox animated series. When it originally aired, I didn't have to catch up with it on Disney Plus. So, I remember when they launched X-Men 2099, and I got into that for a little while, and then I was like, this is not as fun. Where did the X-Men go? So, yeah, all that. As a longtime X-Men fan, with all there's a lot of behind the scenes footage. It's not just like shots from film. It's like, I mean, Hugh Jackman talking about like him playing Wolverine. It's very cool, and it took me back as a kid who I'm class of 2001. Time of Your Life was released in sort of during my childhood from Green Day, my teenage years. And when I was graduating, it was one of those things that played over like every single senior video that we had, that we put together for my graduating time. So, man, I mean, this was like a fucking full circle moment for me, like watching Deadpool and Wolverine, nostalgia all over the place. I don't even know that I can cohesively, fully, properly grade this, except for I can call it out on some of the bullshit, which I have done in terms of the plot and the structure. But I don't know that that's a problem. It's not Sean Levy's problem. I don't know that it was necessarily the screenwriter so much as if they were just told that. If they were like, this is what you can and can't have. Maybe they were told they can't have Domino. Maybe it wasn't so much that Zazie Beetz even turned it down. Maybe they were just told no Domino. We have no intention of bringing her back. I don't know if they chose the cameos. I don't know what the process was like for them of who could be in what, and who was returning as what. So that's all conceptual conversations that happened before the film really got a script, before it ever started shooting. And that's kind of where a lot of my stuff lies, would be in having questions about that. Because if I found out that basically the reason why Daphne Keane doesn't have an accent is because she's a different X-23 who had a similar experience to the X-23 in Logan, and that is a different multiverse then that makes sense. However, they just don't really explain it that way. Um, there's a lot. So, audio description, I haven't been able to talk about. This is the longest fucking review I think I've ever done in my life. But I wanted to include spoilers because I know people look for spoilers. They're like, oh, who's in what film? And I wanted to include all of that in there. Audio description does a really good job of bringing out all the cameos, which is why I was able to name all of them. Now I'm thinking, because I said Lady Deathstrike instead of Deadpool, and then I remember Deathstrike's in there. like she's in here. She's one of the many people who fight for Cassandra, one of the many sort of Brotherhood of Evil Mutants type characters who fight on her side. So yes, it does a really good job with that. I always have a problem when I go to the movie theaters when they're loud. And where I live, the headsets that I get, the theaters that are closest to me are Regal theaters. That's just how life is. The AMC theaters are quite a drive. I don't know if they have different headsets, but it would not make sense for me to drive to them. And my headsets are not quality enough. Even at full volume, they get blared out during loud movies. I had a little bit of that problem during Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And I had a lot of that problem here, where during the fight scenes, when they do the needle drops to like stuff like Bye 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 and stuff, the song and sound effects and everything are so much louder. So like during those sequences, I couldn't even hear the audio description, even though it was fully turned up in my headset, because my headset just couldn't make enough noise to be able to do that. So yeah, so from what I could tell from when I got it, I got good audio description about the cameo. I think the audio description first does refer to him as Steve Rogers, because that was the assumption, is that Deadpool is hinting at it being Steve Rogers, and then the gag is, oh no, it's not Steve Rogers, it's Johnny Storm. So I think I caught that out of the thing. Anyway, the after credit sequence is directly related to Deadpool saying, you know, here was some hidden camera footage to prove that Johnny Storm really did say the things that he said that he did to get him killed. That Deadpool, it seems like Deadpool is making up something and throwing him under the bus. But there's this long footage where Chris Evans curses like a mother, just going nuts and going ham and repeating the exact same thing that Deadpool just said. It's kind of funny, but if you don't want to stay all the way through, I don't know why you wouldn't, because the whole credits are utilized with this like time of your life montage stuff, basically the whole credits anyway. Most of them. So that's it. I'm giving Deadpool and Wolverine an A. I liked it. I liked the first two films, of which I have second looks at. I also have the second look at Wolverine. Everything's gotten an A for me in this franchise. They're all A-level films. I love Deadpool, and I love how he's been represented cinematically. Ryan Reynolds is perfect casting and proves it every time he steps foot on screen. This film addresses a lot of the problems that people have with Disney, with Marvel. He makes jokes at people's expenses who make fun of Marvel, but makes it in a way that like acknowledges that we know you have problems. You know, he uses the word woke one time. He's like, oh, the woke mom's not gonna like that. Something like that. Anyway, and he makes fun at Marvel's expense. And he's like, you know, we've had sort of like a series of flops. That's why he calls himself Marvel Jesus. Like he's being expected to save the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's what he thinks this whole thing is about, is that he's been summoned to save the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So it's very, it knows what it is. And I could have gone with more. One thing I will say that has nothing to do with the movie review is holy fuck on the previews. Holy shit, what are we doing? People are like, why don't people go to movie theaters anymore? It's like, I don't need 10 motherfucking previews before the movie starts. I don't even remember all of them. I was like, so Deadpool and Wolverine has an official runtime of 2 hours and 7 minutes. I was in the theater for 2 hours and 45 minutes. No shit. That's unacceptable. That is unreasonably unacceptable. That is ridiculous to have that many fucking previews in front of a film. And then they throw in like little commercials, and of course they have like the little like Regal thing, and it's just like, start the fucking movie, you motherfuckers. Push play on a fucking movie. I had fucking Alien Romulus, I had Borderlands, I had Speak No Evil, Gladiator, the Timothy Chalamet biopic, the Bob Dylan biopic. I had Captain America Civil War, I had Venom 3, I had Beetlejuice. I had, god damn, what else did I have? I can't even remember. Literally, I was like, fucking 10 previews, man. No. 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 Stop it. I used to be a projectionist. I used to put films together. I've never in my life ever put 10 previews in front of a film. 7 would have seemed like a lot to me. It's usually 5 or 6. When we used to actually have film, you would get a list of trailers from the studio that said, put these trailers on a film. Just like, oh my God. I don't want to see any of your films anymore. Kill all of them. Yeah, it was just an unforgivable amount of films. So 10 trailers, man. And they wonder why people don't go to theaters anymore. It's just like, oh, Jesus Christ. So, I mean, like, obviously, like, this set a new record for a rated R film, so people are going to theaters, but not for everything, because they don't want to sit through 10 trailers just to watch, you know, I don't know, what's some low-level movie? I want to swing at a low-level movie right now. I'll go Maxine. Didn't do well at the box office. Put 10 trailers in front of Maxine, people are like, no, I'm leaving. Not doing this. Adding almost 45 minutes to somebody's runtime is insane. You show up, you look up a runtime for a film, you're like 2 hours and 7 minutes, you can plan your day around that. When it ends up being 2 hours and 45 minutes, that's insane. There's an insane amount of previews and like bullshit. So no, I call bullshit on it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side.